2, 1. Welcome to Let's Talk Football. I'm Nolan Dalla. This show is brought to you by Pointspreads.ca. We're going to talk about NFL week number 6 coming up here on Sunday. I believe there are 14 games. I have 10 wagers. I'm going to do the show a little differently today than I've done in the past. I'm going to tell you about the games I don't like and why I don't like these particular games as far as bets. And then I'm going to give you at the very end of the show, well, the later half of the show, I should say, I will give you the games I do like, the bets I'm making, and why, of course, I like them. So let's start with the games that I'm passing on. I'll talk about these rather shortly and pass through these as quickly as possible. The Detroit Lions are traveling to Jacksonville. An interesting matchup because the Jacksonville Jaguars played very well their first 2 games, covering the spread against 2 good teams, if you recall, almost beating Tennessee and then actually upsetting the Indianapolis Colts. But since then, the Jacksonville Jaguars have been dismal. 0-3 against the spread against really bad teams. Cincinnati, Houston, and Miami. So Jacksonville seems to play down to their level of competition, and now they're facing a 1-4 Detroit Lion team, which is coming off a rest. I should say 1-3 Lion team coming off a rest. The Lions actually got beaten up pretty badly by the Saints in their last home game. They've had a couple of weeks to prepare for this. I would be tempted to take the Lions here, but they're favored. Does anybody want to take the Detroit Lions laying 3 points on the road? I don't care if they're playing at Jacksonville. This is a pass for me. Tempting to take Jacksonville, but man, this team has just slid. It seems to look worse every week. So this game is a pass. The Houston Texans traveling to Tennessee. Tennessee coming off their best performance of the season on the Thursday night game where they I should say the Tuesday night game. That game was postponed and then played a few days ago. So Tennessee's a little bit on a short rest here. But Tennessee played very well against Buffalo. Was that a Monday night game, by the way, or Tuesday? I forgot. But anyway, they're on a short week. So sorry for the misinformation there. And then Houston, of course, fired their head coach. And that seemed to at least it ignited a victory against Jacksonville, which isn't really saying much. So Houston's now 1-4, traveling to Tennessee. The Titans are only laying 3.5 here. That seems like a real light number. I think a lot of people will be on Tennessee here, but again, the Titans on a short week maybe won't take the Houston Texans quite as seriously, given how bad the team is. So that's a game I'm passing on. That total is 53, by the way. No interest in that either. Baltimore's traveling to Philadelphia. The Ravens are laying 9.5, and Baltimore's looked really good against bad competition the last couple of weeks, beating up badly on Cincinnati, of course, beating Washington. So since they lost that Monday nighter against the Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore at least has risen to the occasion against bad teams. And here is Philadelphia coming in, which of course has a losing record, still banged up with injuries. Problem is I don't lay 9.5 on the road. I just won't do that. I mean, that's a lot of points. And Philadelphia, if everything goes right for them, they certainly have the parts in place to keep this within the margin. Total 46.5, no interest in that either. Cincinnati's traveling to Indianapolis, another mismatch here, it would seem. The Colts are favored by 7.5, total of 46.5. Cincinnati is a quagmire to me. They looked really good a couple of weeks ago. They played Philadelphia in the tie, and then they, of course, won against Jacksonville at home. And then they got absolutely destroyed at Baltimore last week, and that scared me a little bit. I was looking for a trajectory on the Bengals, maybe showing a little improvement. If they would have kept that game close, we would have said, hey, Cincinnati's just getting a little better every week, a little more confidence with Burrow at the quarterback, and but that defense is awful. And Indianapolis could very well roll up some points here, coming off the loss to the Bears. So this is a game I'm not going to touch. The hook is enough to keep me off of the Colts. In other words, if this was -7, I'm probably on the Indianapolis Colts laying 7, but not 7.5. So that's another game where I'm passing. The Green Bay Packers are traveling to Tampa Bay. This is one of the premier matchups of the week, of course. Green Bay is looks like a juggernaut the way they've been playing especially offensively. And then Tampa Bay, could very well win this division, the NFC South I'm speaking about. So both premier quarterbacks, obviously, should be a high-scoring game, and that's reflected in the total at 55. The Packers are laying 1, and by the way, there's some injuries there that have influenced this line. It was, I think, 3 earlier in the week, and it's now down to the Packers -1. So this is a game where it's probably going to be a lot of scoring, one of those last team with the ball wins kind of a thing. I don't see any value. I don't see anybody can say, hey, I know that I really like this side. I don't see what they're seeing here. So that's a game where I'm also going to pass. I've stayed away from a lot of New England Patriots games this season, and of course, I think there's good reason for that. A lot of unpredictable factors, obviously, with Cam Newton at quarterback, and then we had the COVID hit with Cam Newton, and this is just a team that just seems to be quite unpredictable here. Now they're hosting a Denver team off a 10 days rest that looked really good, beating up on the New York Jets, or scoring a lot of points, and they had a it seemed like they were going to have a really rough situation at quarterback, the Broncos, that is. And then, of course, they scored, I think, 38 points. Of course, that's against the Jets, so maybe that's not saying so much. Anyway, the Patriots are favored by 9 here, a total of 45. Again, there's just too many question marks about both of these teams, especially Denver, which is capable of playing a very good defensive game. The parts are in place for Denver to play well defensively. And then the quarterback, again, showing, that he could produce 38 points last week against the Jets. I don't think they're going to go into New England and do that, obviously, but they may keep this within the 9. So I'm not laying the 9, but I'm not taking the 9 either. So this is another game where I'm passing. Premier game, of course, another one, a Monday night game. There's 2 Monday night games this week, and this is one of them. This is the one I'm passing on, which is the Kansas City Chiefs traveling into Buffalo. Buffalo coming off a short week. They did not look good in that Tennessee loss on Monday night, and now they're hosting, a 4-1 team that's coming off a loss to the Raiders. In fact, a bad loss where their defense was embarrassed, giving up 40-something points to the Las Vegas Raiders. The Kansas City has a remarkable record, particularly Andy Reid, coming off losses. The numbers are something like, they're really staggering, like 19-3 or something straight up. Don't quote me on those figures, but my notes are not in front of me. But Reid is just a stellar coach, certainly in terms of won-loss record, and also against the spread when his teams, especially his Kansas City teams, come off losses. The problem is the Buffalo Bills are also coming off a loss. So the Chiefs are favored by 4.5 here. It seems like, let's jump on the Chiefs here and lay 4.5. That's the lowest total that's the lowest line you may see on a Kansas City Chiefs game this season. I don't remember the rest of their schedule, but they're going to be, laying 8, 9, 10, up to 15 points on just about everybody. But of course, they're on the road here. They're playing at Buffalo, which is acknowledged to have a pretty good defense, certainly above average. So who wants to take this? The total at 54.5. It seems like every single week we see the Kansas City Chiefs total to right around 54, and it seems like they hit at 53, 54, 56. They're right in there. So it seems like the numbers are just, I think, really solid here. I guess I might lean to the Chiefs just a little bit because Buffalo looks so just mismatched against Tennessee in that game a couple of nights ago, and now they're having to play another really tough physical opponent in the Chiefs with a even better offense. So not going to take this one, although, again, I do lean to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now let's talk about the games where I did make wagers. And when I say I made 10 wagers, it's not like I bet 10 games here. What I did is I bet several first halves you'll hear me talk about, totals, and things that are not really correlated, but like a first half over and a game over. Well, that's 2 individual bets, but they're kind of the same, the same supporting evidence for them. So when I have 10 bets, it doesn't mean I have actually 10 games. I think there's something like 5 or 6 games I bet. So let's look at those now, and I'll try to spend a little more time on them and get into a little more detail if I can. So the Chicago Bears are playing at Carolina. 2 shocking teams with their records, of course, and how they performed. Carolina looked like it was going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL when the season began. They lost their first 2, and then they've won 3 straight. and look very, very good doing it. Teddy Bridgewater, I've said this on my show here every single week. I said, this is a very underrated quarterback. He doesn't, he's not going to throw for 450 yards every week, but he's not going to make the mistakes that kill his team. And I think that's what a young team like the Carolina Panthers really need. Now, defensively, this team's got some really problems. The Panthers, I mean. The problem is, can the Bears offense exploit the defensive deficiencies on the Carolina Panthers? I don't think so. So the Panthers are favored by 3, laying 3 here, by the way. Who would have seen that? And the Bears are a 4-1 team, but they have just won ugly, ugly, ugly games. And you could go back and look at their record. They were behind in all these games. The only game where they kind of won, impressively was against the New York Giants. And I think that was a 7 or a 10-point win. So that's not really saying much. But, it's very tempting here to play, I think, Chicago. And that's going to basically be the reason for my wager here. I really do like the Chicago Bears getting a half point in the first half. So these are two teams that where I think it's going to be a close game. I think we have kind of a coin flip situation. And when you're flipping a coin and you're giving me a half point or giving me any kind of advantage, I'm going to take it. So that's why I'm taking the Bears, not because I think the Bears are really that much of a better team or anything else. But again, a coin flip situation, Chicago Bears plus a half point. Got to lay minus 115 on this, but I think that's justified here. So Bears first half plus the half point. 2 other wagers on this. I also like this game to go over. I think we are going to see some points. The Chicago Bears have been up and down as far as offensively, but Carolina just allows a lot of points usually. And they did shut down Arizona. That was a kind of an aberration 2 weeks ago. But Carolina's defense is not very good. I think the Bears, with Foles having a really erratic season, didn't even start the first 3 or 4 games, comes in on the back end of that Atlanta game, brings them back, and then he looks horrible for the first half of the following game. Just very erratic offensive performances here. But I think the Bears have the tools here. Also a very good running game to take advantage of the Panthers and also produce some points. And Carolina also scoring some points, playing pretty good offensively right now. So the first half total is 21.5. Now that's a very low total for a first half in today's NFL, where the average number of points being scored this season, you're going to hear me say this on the show a few times, the average number of points scored in the NFL this season is 50 points per game, 50. That's up about 5 or 6 points a game on average from last season. And from, say, 5 or 6 years ago, it's up almost 10 points. So this is the age of offense and throwing the ball and passing. And anytime I see a number anywhere down below 50, you first of all need to look at it. And then this total at 21.5 is much lower than the average in the NFL. And then the game total also at 44.5. I think they're not giving maybe either of these offenses enough credit. And the defense, again, of Carolina, I think will be a problem. So I'm going to go over 44 on this game. Sorry, over 44. I said 44.5, I think. It's over 44. That's an important, by the way, distinction. 44, not 44.5. So you need to find the 44 because there's a lot of key mathematical computations, the 24-20 and the multiples of scoring that are common in the NFL. 44 is one of those key numbers. So try to catch the 44 if you can. I like it a little less at 44.5. First half, of course, I just said over 21.5, and then I like the Chicago Bears getting the plus half point in the first half. Another game I bet, the Atlanta Falcons are playing at Minnesota. The Falcons, of course, fired their head coach, Dan Quinn, in the this week after a terrible start, 0-5. And offensively, that team is a little bit misleading because they score a lot of points. They scored a lot of points certainly the first 3 or 4 games. And then Matt Ryan has not thrown a touchdown pass in 3 weeks. And they've just not produced a lot of yardage. So it seems like the lack of confidence on the Falcons with losing streak, firing the coach, a lot of disarray on the team has now infected the Falcons offense, which until this point had not been a problem. Now, Minnesota's coming off a game they probably should have won or could have won at Seattle. That team has really been, it's misleading their record. 1-4, but they played a murderous schedule. And I think Zimmer still has this team. He's still got them together. And I think that they're going to win some games now. The Vikings doesn't mean they're going to make the playoffs or make any kind of a rush here because there's too many flaws in the Vikings. But compared to the Atlanta Falcons, Minnesota should take care of business here at home. The Vikings are laying 4, the total of 54. Now, rather than lay 4, I went ahead and laid the money line on this. In other words, the Vikings just need to win the game. And I found a minus 185 on this, by the way. I think it spreads, it's minus 190. So you've got to lay $190 to win 100 on the Vikings on the money line. I found you got to line shop. You got to find your best price, and I found a 185 here in Las Vegas. I've seen a lot of 195s on the money line with the Vikings. I think anything under 200, you can bet the Vikings with confidence. Atlanta's just in absolute disarray right now. I wouldn't want to touch that team. I don't think you should either bet against, fade the Falcons. Washington's traveling to the New York Giants, who played a phenomenal game last week against the Cowboys. Could have won the game, of course. They were up, I think, by 16, 17 points against the Cowboys. Their offense, the Giants' offense, on paper just looks terrible, but they did come to life, and they scored, of course, in the 30s last week. So that was their best offensive output. And now they're playing one of the bottom 2 or 3 teams in the NFL who's not shown any kind of life the last few weeks here. Or this season, really, and that's the Washington football team. Now, I didn't bet the Giants. That's where it looked like I was going. Actually, I like the over 43 in this game. The total is 43. I think the Giants, first of all, don't have a very good defense. Neither does Washington. So I think that we're going to, defensively, we can justify going over the 43. But I really like the New York Giants offense to carry over from what they did with the Cowboys last week and put up some points. And I think this turns into a track meet for a couple of reasons. I think Washington falls behind, throws the ball, mistakes. We may see a bit more higher scoring game than I think people, certainly odds makers, are giving these two teams not credit for. So I'm going over 43 in the Washington-New York Giants game. Cleveland's at Pittsburgh. The Steelers are undefeated, but they've played just a dreadful schedule. Just really weak competition. And then the Browns, after losing their opener at Baltimore, they've rattled off 4 straight victories, including beating some pretty good teams. Cleveland is in their best shape that they've been in years at 4-1, staring at a playoff spot if they keep playing this well. The offense is clicking. Defense is playing pretty well. I really like the Browns here getting 3.5. And by the way, when I said the half, that is huge because, again, 3 is good. I like the Browns at 3. At 3.5, it becomes an absolute, I think, must play because this line is 3.5 because of the reputations of the teams. Steelers, all the glory years, a public team. The Browns kind of thought of as this kind of a mess of a team, and they have been. But that was then, and this is now. And the Browns getting 3.5, given the way they've played, also giving the tougher schedule, very important point here, the tougher schedule the Browns have played, I think warrants a bet on the underdog Cleveland Browns plus 3.5. The Los Angeles Rams traveling to San Francisco. San Francisco's decimated here, 2-4 record. Looks like they may miss the playoffs. A lot of it not their fault, of course, because of the injuries. We don't even know who's starting at quarterback. This game was off the board much of the week. The line that I've seen here released on Saturday morning is the Rams are favored by 3.5. I think that you can lay the Rams here, lay that number, even though I've been doing this for like 25 years, and one of my fundamental lessons on football handicapping is do not lay points with divisional rivals, especially if they're on the road. And the Rams are laying 3.5 here on the road at San Francisco. The thing is, the Rams are 4-1, playing very well, and not doing it with smoke and mirrors. That's just fundamental football. They're beating their opponents at the line of scrimmage, and they could have won that Buffalo game, by the way. They fell behind, I think, 21-3 or something. They stormed back and took the lead in that game. This team could be 5-0 right now. A lot of people wrote off the Rams after a disappointing 9-7 season last year, but they're beating the teams they should beat. They're whipping up the teams where they're clearly the superior team. And now with the, especially with the San Francisco 49ers banged up and missing something like 9 starters on both sides of the ball, on injured reserve, I think you can lay the Rams here, lay 3.5 and be quite confident in that one. So I would definitely take the Rams in that game. The New York Jets are playing at Miami. Dolphins, who would have guessed you'd ever see this kind of a line? Dolphins minus 9.5, total of 47. The thing is, Miami just whipped up on San Francisco last week. And I think actually the lines makers, public, everyone's overreacting a little bit to that. This game probably should be 7. This game should be maybe 7. Division rivals, and of course the Jets are, I think, universally acknowledged. I'm not sure there's any debate now that the Jets are the worst team in the NFL. I don't know how Adam Gase has a job. That's front page headlines in New York, New Jersey. So there's almost nothing to lose here for the Jets. I think they go into this game. I don't really know what the mindset will be. I'm not going to take the 9.5, as tempting as that is. The Jets could get blown out. They're losing their games by an average of 16 points a game. They're getting destroyed by everyone they play. And Miami may turn this into a track meet. They may just air it out, and they may put up 45 on the Jets. That's possible. And actually, that's what I'm counting to happen. All right, that's what I'm counting to happen. So I'm taking 2 wagers. I'm making 2 wagers on the New York Jets Miami Dolphins game, over and over. And that's over 23.5 in the first half. And then for the game, it's 47. Again, not 47.5, 47, another key number in totals betting. So let me tell you, the 23.5, that's really important. We talk about first half bets and second half bets too. These are key numbers. 24 is one of those. That's a dead-on key number in totals betting for the first half and the second half. It's much harder to go over a 24.5 than to say a 23.5. That's because 24 is just such a powerful number. So I saw the 23.5 here on the Jets-Dolphins game. I said, bang, give me the over. So I think the Jets will come out firing a bit here. The Dolphins have certainly shown the ability to score points, coming off a 40-point production with the 49ers last week. I think this flies over the total of 47 for the game, and then over 23.5 for the first half. And then my final play is the Arizona Cardinals playing at Dallas. This is a Monday night game. It's funny. This goes back to the 1970s. I used to have Dallas Cowboy season tickets, and I remember seeing what were then the St. Louis Cardinals. I'm going to tell you a little story here. I remember the St. Louis Cardinals, and I saw a lot of those games in the 70s and even some in the 80s. And this rivalry, or whatever, maybe it's not a rivalry anymore because they're not division rivals any longer, but Dallas has played the Cardinals something like 100 times in the last 60 years since these two teams have been in existence. I don't think I don't have, again, the stats on this. Someone could check on this. I don't believe the Cardinals have ever been favored at Dallas. I can't recall that ever happening. I can't recall the Cardinals, who really have been a pretty dismal team for most of their 50, 60 years, and they've just never been favored at Dallas. So I saw this line and went, whoa. Now, if Dak Prescott, who's injured, of course, was starting this game, this would be Dallas -4, maybe 5. I don't know, again, the number. But the number here is now Cardinals by 1.5. And this number's been 2.5 down to about 0.5. Anyway, I've got it at 1.5 with the Cardinals. Total of 55. Everyone's expecting a shootout. The thing is, Anthony Dalton, I'm not sure, wants to get involved in a shootout with the Cardinals. I think you're going to see a lot of ground game. You're going to see a lot of Ezekiel Elliott. You're going to see a lot of Dallas rushing the ball, dominating time of possession, which they can do against the Cardinals. I think this is going to be a close game here. And again, back to echoing my first point on that Chicago Bear-Carolina game, when you have a close game and you can get any kind of advantage on the wagering, take it. And so the Dallas Cowboys in the first half getting a 0.5 point. Let me have it. I'll take the Dallas Cowboys to keep this game close, certainly in the first half. I think it's going to be a tight game, So I'm getting a half point with the Cowboys at home, playing their third straight home game, by the way. Their third straight home game. Meanwhile, the Cardinals have been on the road for, this is their third straight game. That's a really big factor. Now, the home field advantage is not the same without the crowds, but you still have travel. You still have having to get on airplanes. You have to check into hotels. You don't have the usual repetition of practice and so forth. The Cowboys have been at home 3 straight weeks, their third straight week, and then they played Cleveland, lost that game, roared back and beat the Giants, which was not impressive, certainly defensively, but they did win the game with backup Anthony Dalton coming in relief role. And then they should be prepared here for Arizona on Monday night, no less. So again, Dallas should keep this. There's no excuse for Dallas not to at least keep this close, play well. I was a bit surprised to see this line, Dallas Cowboys, a dog at home to the Cardinals. So again, that's my 10 plays I gave you. I'll run them down again. I'm just going to read up from the bottom of the list. I'll tell you my plays again, and then hopefully you can consider them. And if not, if you want to bet against them, go ahead. My season record, by the way, I'm always upfront about this. I've been doing this for, as you know, many, many years. My record this year is 29 wins, 26 losses. With my hypothetical starting bankroll of $10,000, I'm at $10,900 now. So up about $900 on my wagers the season so far. You can check this out, by the way, at my site, which is nolandalla.com. Also, obviously, Pointspreads.ca carries this every single week. You can go back and verify it if you want. Anyways, no reason to make things up. But 29 and 26 is my record so far. Not totally pleased with that. I'd like to do a little better, but hey, if you can win 55% of your games in the NFL and say make back something like 9% on the bankroll after the first month or so, I'm going to take that, even with some bad beats and maybe even some lucky breaks along the way as well. My final bets now, I'll just read them to you. Going up the card, the Chicago Bears over 44 for the game. Chicago Bears, Carolina Panthers, that is, over 44.5. Washington, New York, over 22 in the first half. Washington, New York, over 22 in the first half. The New York Jets, Miami Dolphins, over 23.5 for the first half. The Cleveland Browns, plus 3.5 for the game, playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. Minnesota Vikings on the money line, minus 185, hosting the winless Atlanta Falcons. The Chicago Bears, Carolina Panthers, first half, over 21.5. Washington, New York, over 43 points for the game, over 43 in that game. The New York Jets, Miami game to go over 47. The Chicago Bears getting the half point in the first half. Bears plus a half point playing at Carolina. The final wager on Monday night, the Cowboys hosting the Arizona Cardinals, getting the half point. I'm taking the Cowboys. Those are my 10 bets. This is NFL Week 6. We talked football on Let's Talk Football. We'll be back here next week on week number 7. I'm Nolan Dalla for Pointspreads.ca, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.